Sup everyone, welcome to another video, and now you may see on screen that I have Scaramouche here, but don't get too excited, this is not my account, nor is it the Genshin Impact testing account. I was fortunate enough to have somebody a part of my community, well, to be specific, my moderator Moonlight was able to snag herself a Scaramouche, build him up all the way to level 80 with talent level 577. Now, we didn't know which one was optimized, but unfortunate to say, now looking in hindsight, probably should have been 775 with normal attack, elemental skill, and then burst skill at the end there, but you know, it's fine, it's whatever. I was able to test this character semi-extensively because the key thing to note here is we did not have time to farm up Faruzan. So yes, this review is going to be done without Faruzan, and don't worry, the lack of Faruzan actually highlights a lot of Scaramouche's shortcomings, well, shortcomings or lack of synergy, whatever you guys want to call it. So moving on, just know that Faruzan is not a part of this general overview, but a lot of other characters are. So let's get into the video. So first and foremost with Scaramouche, okay, C0. Is he a good unit? I would have to say he's okay. Right now, if you guys are here wanting me to praise and shower him with amazing accolades, well, this might not be the video for you just yet, because at first impressions, just getting to know this character, playing around with him, it seems like he does need a lot of help. Not the kind from the developmental side, but from the character side, his synergies, his teammates. Scaramouche is not a character that can solo carry the team without additional buffs, help, assistance, off-field damage, and whatnot. Now, a lot of people do compare him to Xiao, and after playing him, it is evident that there is some similarities, but also differences. While Xiao is built around his hyper carry style being extremely aggressive without needing much help, what Xiao really needs is protection and the environment to deal damage safely, and also someone to kind of heal him back up from all the HP loss. Scaramouche plays to a whole different niche of playstyle here. Scaramouche, through his second talent, would prefer you to have certain elemental synergies to pair with him on his team. Now, don't get the wrong idea here. You should never be building teams around these talent buffs. They're simply not good enough to justify, let's say, running a pyro and then running a cryo just to get those specific buffs. And actually, in fact, you should be aiming to run things like electro and hydro on your team, because these two elements can be swirled simultaneously, right? So then you should be able to get both of these buffs for Scaramouche, as opposed to elements that cancel each other out and then you end up just swirling one of them. So this is the thing that I've noticed playing Scaramouche, is that he himself, through his scaling, it just doesn't feel enough, especially without Faruzan. And now, especially if you guys want to include Faruzan on his team, you would be taking away one of the random characters, right? But personally, and again, this is just from my first initial testing, it does feel like he needs an off-field DPS, and who I found to be working best with him so far is either Yelan or Xingqiu. Now, both of these characters can synergize extremely well with his normal attack, and through his talent 2, you can also get additional bonuses with these characters. Now, again, these are just side bonuses. I'm not playing Yelan or Xingqiu for the hydro bonus, just like you probably shouldn't play Toma with him for the pyro bonus. Scaramouche spends a lot of time on field. It's inevitable because he is designed to be in hyper carry, so a character like Yelan synergizing extremely well with him is a no-brainer. Is he exclusively meant to play with Yelan? No, not quite. If you have Xingqiu, it's fine as well. If you don't have Yelan, if you have Kokomi, you can slot in Kokomi as a decent healer. Now, because we have Yelan slotted in here, and also we have Faruzan, let's just assume we have Faruzan, because really without Faruzan, it did feel like he was lacking a bit of punch. Now, am I going to say Faruzan is an absolute necessity to play with Scaramouche? I wouldn't say that just yet, but I just gotta say, I was playing him with Bennett, Yelan, and Raiden Shogun, and I think Yelan was probably just a bit behind him in terms of damage output, maybe even around his level, and Raiden was just slapping him out the water. It just seems like he didn't really shine as much as I would hope him to have shined in this scenario, where the team was essentially constructed to give him as much agency as possible, which led me to think, well, maybe he just needs that dedicated support. I mean, why would Hoyoverse release a dedicated Anemo support with an Anemo hypercarry if it wasn't meant for them to stick in one? team. So ultimately, going forward, I'm just going to assume that people who want to play or invest into Scaramouche is also going to be investing into Faruzan. Now, that means both slots on the team are now taken, leaving you only 2 more spots. For people who pick Yelan to go with Scaramouche, likely the 4th slot, you're going to have to pick an Electro healer. Now, this is where things get a little tricky. Depending on who you have invested in recently, it seems like Hoyoverse is now funneling towards options such as Dori or Shinobu. Now, it just feels like every other character that comes out recently, no matter how you construct the teams, if you need or want Electro on your team, oftentimes the most optimal damage route is sealed off by running Yelan and leaving the Electro healer spot open and has to be filled. So people who haven't invested into either Shinobu or Dori will probably end up having to run instead like a Pyro healer or another Anemo healer, which I think triple Anemo on the same team is going to be kind of excessive, which really just leave Bennett. Now, on the surface, you would say, well, Bennett's fine, right? Scaramouche scales off of attack. He's like as traditional of a DPS as you can think of: attack, elemental damage percentage, and crit rate or crit damage. Very, very standard. Haven't seen one of these characters, it feels like, in forever. The problem really is when you are playing Scaramouche, and even though he's lifted off the ground, at times you'll find that mobs are still able to reach him, hit him around, bob him around a little bit, and it's difficult for him to completely sit in Bennett's circle the whole time. Before you know it, you're either hit out of it or you're going to have to dash to utilize his Ascension 1. Now, of course, you can be very careful when you're dashing in a circle roundabout, making sure that you stay within Bennett's burst range, which then just leaves this up to the player and how well you are at spatial awareness and fighting around the field to your advantage. However, ideally, you would have someone like Cookie Shinobu who can apply the heal aura around you, leaving you free to do whatever the hell you need. That flexibility is going to be invaluable, and on top of that, you're also going to have Yelan's off-field damage to be facilitating a huge chunk of damage. Now, on top of that, then you would have Faruzan shredding enemy Anemo resistance as well as buffing your team's Anemo damage output. Now, this part is incredibly crucial. The importance of Faruzan is not only does she buff your Anemo damage, she also decreases the enemy's Anemo resistance. She's like a walking viridescent set for Anemo as well as a dedicated buffer. It's quite important that if you want to play Scaramouche, you pick up a C0 Faruzan. Really, after testing, I can wholeheartedly say it seems like you can't get around this. Now, when I say you can't get around this, I don't mean like, oh, Scaramouche can never clear Abyss 12 without Faruzan. Of course he can. Listen, people. But the thing is, it's incredibly difficult to utilize this Ascension 4 because it requires him to swirl the element that he desires the buff for. It's not like Nahida, you slap him on the team and you immediately get the effects. So it's really inefficient to say slap 3 different elements on the team. What I think are the best elements to probably go for is likely Cryo or Hydro or Electro. Now, Pyro is fine, you could go for it, but I just haven't found many teams or supports that are able to consistently help. And honestly, the Pyro buff doesn't seem it's good, but it doesn't seem as flexible as some of the elements. And really what you're giving up for running Pyro is the flexibility of those other elemental typings. And Pyro hasn't really had many amazing units released in recent times. Cryo has amazing units in the support category, same with Hydro. So these are the 2 elements that I'm looking forward to. And also Electro has some very banger units too, mainly Raiden Shogun and Fischl, being able to fill those categories. And like I said, if you guys have built Dori or you have built Cookie Shinobu, those are amazing units to run with him as well. Speaking of Raiden Shogun, let's just touch on the synergies here a little bit. I think some people might be wanting to pair him with Raiden. So let's say Scaramouche, Raiden, Cookie Shinobu, and Yelan, or Kokomi and Yelan. So both of these variations are fine. The idea really is that with Scaramouche's downtime, you're going to switch to Raiden and pump out a huge load of damage, helping your entire team get their burst back. Now, Scaramouche from testing isn't a very energy regen hungry character. If you want to be self-sustaining with particles, you likely will need like, I don't know, 145, 150 maybe ER per elemental skill rotation to get his burst back. But honestly, I don't think you should really hunt for energy regen. Around 110, 120 is more than enough, considering your other characters also have to rotate and you get a little bit of help from that as well. So So for people who want to run Raiden to supercharge him, I mean, he has a 60 cost burst. It really isn't anything crazy. Yes, Raiden of course obviously helps, and yes, rolling Electro obviously helps even more, but I wouldn't say it's something that he really needs in his kit. In that aspect, he's quite different from someone like Itto. Not that energy hungry, which ultimately leads me to think if you end up having to decide between running a double Hydro team or a double Electro team, likely the double Hydro team is better with Kokomi and Yalan instead of Raiden Shogun and Kuki Shinobu. Okay, and speaking on Raiden, if you don't want to waste your Raiden's potential as a support DPS for Scaramouche teams, Fischl works just fine. I only ran Raiden in my teams just to see how the synergy worked, and to be quite honest with you, it felt a little bit excessive. And if you have no Faruzan on your team, then maybe it could be justified, as the lack of damage buffs to Scaramouche maybe will make him require a secondary DPS. But then it kind of goes against his kit design and character philosophy in being an aggressive hyper carry field hogger. So at the end of the day, what's the verdict, right? If I had to give a score out of 10, right, let's say Raiden Shogun is a 9 or 9.5, I'll probably 9.5, all right? And Scaramouche, where is he sitting in comparison to that score? I'd say he's a solid 7, maybe 7.5. Without Faruzan, and maybe Faruzan can bring him up to an 8 or 8.5, being a very, very solid hypercarry DPS. Now, in my opinion, Itto C0 is sitting around an 8 or 8.5, and Zhao C0 is a solid 8. I think Itto is just a little bit better than Zhao, 8.5. So Scaramouche probably, once optimized with his dedicated support, should be sitting at 8.5, maybe 9 if the damage output is just that good and the flexibility is well enough to justify giving him that score. Itto is not very flexible. His team comms are extremely limited. Zhao, while being a little more flexible than Itto, his downsides and lack of a vertical scaling constellation is taking a lot of score off. And at first glance, Scaramouche has a decent ceiling, and I can only see that ceiling rising higher up with Faruzan cons and Scaramouche cons. But right now, it just feels like I don't have enough data to strictly mark him with the score that he truly deserves. Now, it's unfair of me right now to mark him even without pairing him with Faruzan. So, I mean, I guess this is just a score for him without Faruzan. If you're planning to play Scaramouche without Faruzan, he gets a 7. Likely, if you want to play him with Faruzan, he'll be 8.5, maybe 9. So, potentially, he's going to be a very solid hyper carry DPS. Now, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching through this first impression videos. Let me know what you guys think. Have you pulled Scaramouche? Have you tried him out? If you had the opportunity to play Faruzan with him, please let me know how did that work out. Once again, thank you again to Moonlight for sponsoring her account, for letting me to test this character out, and I'll be seeing you guys all tomorrow, where I'm going to be summoning for Scaramouche myself. Until then, urge y'all to stay safe, and peace. Bye.